Excel 5.0 is Microsoft's latest version of its best-selling spreadsheet software designed with a host of new features to improve the program's usability and productivity. Microsoft is also determined to improve the commonality between its various applications, particularly between Excel and its word processor, Microsoft Word. When you start the application, you will notice that the menu bar is very similar to Word 6.0, making learning and switching between the two programs much simpler and more convenient than using the Switch To function as in previous versions of Excel. Before we go into any areas in detail, we will show you some of the new features of Excel 5.0. One of the major complaints with previous versions of Excel and many other programs was the cumbersome nature on-screen help utility. Excel 5.0 has solved that problem with the introduction of the Tip Wizard tool button. This utility offers solutions to your problems by examining your keystrokes and the area you are working on, and then offering a list of possible ideas that might solve your problem. Although not 100% accurate, it can offer significant time savings when you come across small problems. You call up the Tip Wizard by clicking on the light bulb button on the main toolbar. Over the years, Excel has grown through a number of versions and become a great deal more sophisticated. Hand in hand with this has come an increase in the number of icons in an attempt to speed up your work. Excel 5.0 has introduced a utility called Tooltips to let you quickly see what an icon represents. Just move the arrow or cursor over any icon and a brief description of the icon will appear by the arrow. If you were to make all of Excel's toolbars visible on the screen at one time, there wouldn't be much space for a worksheet. However, there are a couple of them that you might want to have on screen as you work. If you feel you need to see a more wide angle of your work, you can click on the View menu and choose Full Screen. Only your worksheet, the row column headings, and the main menu bar will be visible. Your toolbars will also remain visible. When you open the toolbars, they are usually just superimposed on the middle of the screen. If you want to, you can customize the shape of the toolbar frame to make it less obtrusive on the screen and even move it to the edge. Click and hold down the left-hand mouse button on the toolbar's frame. Drag the mouse down to elongate the frame. The buttons in the frame rearrange themselves to fit in the shape. Click and hold down the mouse button on the colored top border of the frame and move the toolbars around screen to a new location. To return to your screen containing all your visible toolbars, click on the full box that appears when you are working in full screen mode. Excel 5.0 improves 4.0's file management and its workbook system. This is a mini file that can contain all the components of your project. Worksheets with their Visual Basic Development modules containing macros and dialog sheets are all stored together. This makes opening, storing, and retrieving the components much simpler. When you create complicated worksheets that are connected by references to each other, the workbook concept makes keeping track of them much simpler. When you open a new file in Excel 5.0, you are opening a workbook that can contain a number of worksheets. These are numbered on the tab buttons at the bottom of the screen. At the bottom of the spreadsheet, you will notice a series of tab buttons. Each one will have a name corresponding to a file within the workbook. To quickly switch between worksheets, just click on the tab button you require. Excel 5.0's paste function command ensures that you enter the required parameters in the correct locations within the function parentheses by asking you for the required data series, whether they are text, numbers, or equations. Function Wizard is a utility to help you enter the required elements in the formula you have selected. To start Function Wizard, click on the Function Wizard button or choose Insert Function from the main menu. The Step 1 dialog box will appear. Choose the function you require and click on Next. In Step 2, the arguments required by the function you selected are displayed. Either type in numerical values or the cell references. Function Wizard has a help utility to explain the components of the function. Required arguments are highlighted in bold letter, while optional ones are in plain text. Do you ever get tired of repeating the same formatting in a cell, only to find you have to repeat it again and again later on? Using Format Painter, the paintbrush button on the toolbar, you can copy simply and accurately a format from one cell to another without going through the copy-paste command. Simply click on the cell that you want to copy a format from, and then click on the Format Painter button. Then click on the cell or group of cells that you want the format copied to. As you highlight over each cell, the format will be applied. When you release the mouse button, the formatting will stop. Excel spreadsheets are often used to perform analysis on data imported from other applications like databases. Very often, when the information is imported, it is not in a form immediately usable by Excel. For example, tables of information downloaded from a database might contain blank rows. The Text Wizard utility allows you to manipulate the imported data quickly. Once you import the database file that was saved in a text delimited file, Excel's Text Wizard utility will start. Follow the steps to convert your text file into a format that can be manipulated by Excel. The file we are demonstrating with is a simple database file that has been saved as a text file for the purpose of importing into Excel. You might use this feature when you want to download a figure from a database file for charting or tabulating in Excel. Each row contains one record of information. Each data element in the row is separated by a tab. This method of separating the data elements was set when the file was originally copied from the parent database. Excel cannot manipulate the data when it is in this form. When the file is opened, Excel recognizes it as a delimited database file and automatically runs its Text Wizard utility. This utility has the capability to separate the data elements in each row into a separate column. The first screen of Text Wizard shows you a preview of the file you are importing. Step 2 asks you to confirm how the data is separated. For example, tabs, commas, semicolons, or just spaces. Our text file uses tabs as separators. Click on the Tab option. Step 3 asks if you want to customize each column in the file. Example, text, number, and date formats. Click Finish when you are ready. Excel 5.0 has a range of tools for giving worksheets more of a professional finish. These include drawing tools, text boxes that act almost as miniature documents, embedded charts, text and graphics from other applications, automatic updating of charts when the source data is changed, importing of graphics, either created or scanned from other applications, and using a graphic object such as a tool button. As you become more proficient with Excel, you will quickly realize that its capabilities go far beyond simple worksheet applications. Being able to import professionally created or other graphics into your worksheet is a great advantage. To import graphics like the one on this sheet, click on the cell you want the upper left-hand corner of the graphic to be placed. Choose Insert Picture from the main menu bar. The dialog box with the picture options will then be visible on the screen. Click the cursor on the file you want to import. Click on the preview box if you wish. You can, of course, customize or edit the graphic in Microsoft's Paint program that comes with Windows or another application. Then copy it back into Excel. If you want to import graphics from other Windows programs, click on Insert, then Object. A dialog box will appear listing the types of objects that can be imported. Most of them come from other Microsoft applications such as Word or Paint. Click on the Microsoft Drawing option. The Paint application will appear superimposed on top of the Excel screen. Draw a simple graphic using the tools provided.
Okay, you need to start.
Then click File, then Exit. It will ask you to confirm that you want to return to Excel. Click OK and the graphic will appear in a frame in Excel. Note, if you insert the graphic as an object rather than as a simple bitmapped picture, you have the ability to double-click inside the graphics frame and return to the drawing application to do more editing.
Colors.
If you inserted just a simple picture, this option will not be available. For either method just described, once the graphic is in the worksheet, it can be manipulated, either moving it or changing its size. The small square handles at the corners of the frame and in the middle of each side allow you to do this. Move the cursor arrow over one of these squares until it becomes a two-headed arrow. Then click and hold down the left mouse button. Move the mouse and you will see the frame change its size. To increase or decrease the frame both horizontally and vertically at the same time, use the squares on the corners. Opening the drawing toolbar allows you to use a range of simple but effective graphic creation tools. To make the drawing toolbar visible, click on View Toolbars command. Select Drawing, then click OK. The drawing toolbar will appear on the screen. Placing the arrow over each button on the toolbar will bring up the tool tips to explain each one's task. Charting is one of Excel's most powerful presentation tools. Very often, combining a chart on a page with the figures or data is a very effective presentation technique that improves interpretation, understanding, and readability. Look at the way the data in the table on the screen is laid out. In the columns are the data series names or categories. In the rows are the data series themselves. This is a simple standard layout for charting. Here, we will describe the chart creation process itself using the simple data table on the screen. The Chart Wizard function guides you through the chart creation process. First, using the cursor arrow, highlight the data you want to chart, then click on the Chart Wizard button on the main toolbar. Using the mouse, hold down the left mouse button and drag it to create a frame where the chart will be inserted. Then release the mouse button. Remember, you don't have to match the frame to the cell borders. You can overlay it anywhere. Putting a chart inside a frame on a page is called embedding. After you release the mouse button, the Chart Wizard dialog box appears and guides you through the 5 stages of the chart creation process. On each of the Chart Wizard menu boxes, you will see forward and reverse buttons. These allow you to move through the 5 stages to do any editing. Here are the 5 steps of the Chart Wizard process. Step 1 asks you for the range of cells to be used for your chart. The dialog box will show you the range of the cells you initially highlighted. You can change them manually in this box if you need to. Step 2. Here you are asked the type of chart you want to use. There are 15 to choose from. Remember that depending on the type of data you are trying to present, certain charts will be better than others. For example, pie charts are good for showing percentage breakdowns. Experiment and see which one is the best for your data. If you need to change, you can use the back and next buttons to return to this step in the charting process. Once you have selected your chart type, Step 3 asks you how you would like it formatted. Again, there are a number of different options. Step 4 is basically a confirmation of the information you want included in the chart. It determines how you want the category axis and legend to be labeled. If you highlighted the category labels as well as the data in the beginning, they will appear on the sample chart shown in the dialog box. If you laid out the data series in columns instead of rows, you can also change the setup at this stage by clicking on Rows or Columns by the Data Series in area of the box. This step will also allow you to check if Excel has drawn the chart correctly. Step 5 allows you to put the finishing touches to the chart by adding the chart title and the titles for the category and value axes. It will also ask you if you want a legend added or not. When you click Finish after adding everything that you want, the chart will appear embedded in your worksheet. Again, as you saw in the graphics demonstration, by clicking once within the frame boundaries, the resizing frame marker will appear, and you can resize or move the frame just as you did with the graphics. In the future, to add new elements or change some text, just double-click within the frame and the chart border will change to a thicker hatched line to indicate that you are in the chart editing mode. If you want to add more data or features to your chart, you may need to make the frame bigger to accommodate. Now, click outside of the frame on the main worksheet. You are now able to edit the main worksheet once again. Let's say that the chart you created was based on a simple data series. Try changing one of the figures and press Return. You will see that the chart automatically updates itself. The scaling also changes to take into account the edited data series if required. In an attempt to make charting as automatic as possible, Excel has a chart shortcut key. For this to work, the data you wish to chart must be laid out in a format that Excel recognizes. For example, first column equals category axis headings, first row equals data series labels. To use the charting shortcut key, highlight the data you want to chart, then press the F11 function key. A default full screen chart will be created that can then be edited using the Insert menu bar item at the top of the screen, such as titles, data labels, axes, and grid lines. By now, Chart Wizard has guided you through the chart creation process. However, you may want to make changes in the future to reflect changes in the data. There are a number of objects you can change on the chart. Excel tries to make editing as easy as possible. A chart is composed of objects such as the axes, legend, plot area, and titles. Clicking on an object with the right-hand mouse button on the chart will bring up an editing shortcut menu associated with that particular type of object. Experiment by clicking on various sections of the worksheet and seeing what edit menus appear. There are a number of chart elements that you are able to edit. These include the chart background, the axes, the data series themselves, arrows for bringing someone's attention to a particular point on the chart, the markers, the grid lines, the high and low line markers of the chart, and the plot area. Sometimes you might want to change the way a whole data series looks on the screen. You would do this by clicking the left-hand mouse button on any element of the series. For example, on a bar graph, to select one bar series, you only have to click on one of them. The whole series will be selected. To specifically select one data point in the series, double-click on that data point. Also, when you select an object, the object's name will appear in the left end of the formula bar. Certain objects on the chart are more dynamic than others and have the ability to be resized or moved. As an example, click on the plot area within the boundaries of the axes. Small squares at each corner will show your selection. Now, say you want to squeeze the chart down vertically, perhaps to fit more information such as text in at the top of the chart. Move the mouse arrow over the top border of the selection and it changes to a double arrow. Hold down the left-hand mouse button and you can resize the plot area. You can also squeeze it horizontally. To use the chart toolbar to change a chart type, if the chart toolbar is not already visible, when you clicked within the chart frame, click on View, Toolbars, and select Chart from the list. Click OK. The chart toolbar now appears on the screen. Now click the arrow next to the chart type button, the left-hand one on the toolbar, and select the chart you require. Excel's chart auto formatting allows you to select predefined chart formats. This does away with much of the time spent formatting a chart every time you create one. There are quite a few to choose from, and you even have the ability to create your own auto-format templates for future use. Adding another data series to a chart that has already been created is now incredibly easy. With Excel 5.0, you can copy data onto the chart you want. Add July's figures to the data table. Rather than using the Auto Sum button to calculate July's total, try clicking on the cell containing the June total. Place the arrow on the bottom right-hand corner where there is a very small dark square. The arrow should change to a cross. Click and hold down the left-hand mouse button and drag the cell to the cell for July's total. Then release the mouse button. The formula from June is now copied to the new cell. This shortcut can also be done for multiple cells. If the chart is embedded in a spreadsheet, all you need to do is use the mouse to highlight the data, Use the right-hand mouse button to bring up the Edit menu. Click Copy, then click once within the chart frame, then again using the right-hand mouse button, click on Paste. The new data series will be added to the chart. As we mentioned earlier, charts go beyond just presenting static data. They have the capability to become powerful tools. The chart you created is linked to data in the worksheet. When this information is updated, the chart is automatically updated also. However, just substituting in numbers to see what happens on the charts is very tedious, so Excel now has the capability to find a worksheet value to match changes you make on the chart. Activate the chart by double-clicking inside the frame and click on one of the data points in the series you want to change. All members of that series will be highlighted by small editing squares. Click on the same data point again, and only it is highlighted by small squares at the corners for editing. Click and hold down the editing square on the center of the top of the data point. Drag it up or down to a new location and release the mouse button. You are not constrained by the high and low values of the chart axis. If you drag the data point to a position outside the current axis boundary, the axes will adjust accordingly. Look at the data table on which the chart is based. The number corresponding to the data point you just edited should have changed to reflect the data point's new position. As you change the column's position, you will be able to see the values change in the box at the left-hand end of the formula bar. This chart and table is a very simple example of a what-if analysis. There is one more variation. The total figure is a formula that sums up the cars and motorcycles figures. If we change one of the bars of the total data series, Excel will need to know if this change is based on changes in car or motorcycle sales. What will happen is that Excel runs its Goal Seek utility to find the new value in the worksheet. The dialog box appears. Decide which data series you want to change, either cars or motorcycles, and click on the cell corresponding to that data point. That cell is then displayed in the dialog box. Automatically analyzing trends using a chart, Excel 5.0 has introduced a new tool to help you plot trends in chart data. It has a new powerful analysis tool based on a number of statistical regression techniques to plot accurate trend lines through your charts. To insert a trend line into your chart, click on the data series you want to apply the trend line to. For example, the total sales series. Then click on Insert, then choose Trend Line. Then choose from any of the trend line icons displayed and click on the Options tab button for further editing features. The trend line will be superimposed on top of your chart series. You can tailor it by going to Format, Selected Trend Line, and choose between patterns or options to customize the line. Remember, you should have a reasonably good understanding of these tools to get the most accurate analysis from your data. A list is a way of storing information in a format that allows simple retrieval and analysis. Create a simple list for first name, last name, address, city, state, zip, and phone number. Each row in a list is called a record. A record contains number of fields, each one containing one piece of information about that record. Each field is given an identifying name. These names are used as the criteria when searching for records in your list. All you need to do now is select one cell within the list. When you choose the Data command from the main menu bar, Excel determines the list's size and field names for you. It is important to ensure that the space immediately surrounding your list is composed of completely empty cells. When you click on a cell in the list to define the dimensions, Excel assumes that every cell containing data is part of the list until a blank cell is reached. Excel also assumes that the first row in each column is the field name for that column. In this way, you can have many lists on one worksheet, although this may not be practical. Let's name the lists to make them more identifiable in the future. Click on any cell within your list and click Insert, Name, Define. In the Name Edit box, type in a name that describes that particular list. Click OK. This is done for all the lists on your worksheet. Now, when you want to switch quickly to another list, click Edit, Go To, or just press the F5 shortcut key and double-click on the list name you want. Once you've switched to the list you want, click on the Data command, and this will set this list as the active list. Now that we have activated the list we want to work with, we will now enter data into our list. Click on Data, then Form. A form will appear on the screen containing all the field names in the list you are currently in. All of the cells on the left-hand side of the scrolling bar come from the field names, while those on the right are the standard data editing buttons. You can enter new records or edit those currently in the list using this form. Pressing Return is the key for entering a new record. When you type data in the first box on the form, do not use the Return key to move you on to the next cell. Use the Tab button to click between the cells in the form. Or you can enter a record directly into the list. Either insert a line and enter the record, or scroll to the end of the list and enter it there. You can add borders, color, or shading to make your list easier to read and identify. Experiment with this yourselves. When you enter records in your list either manually or using the data from it, it will start to look rather unsorted. Excel doesn't automatically sort the data alphabetically or numerically, so you must do that yourself at some point. To sort your list, select Data, then Sort from the main menu bar. The Sort dialog box appears on the screen. The Sort By button determines which fields Excel will sort the list by. If you click on the arrow, the field names in the list will appear. Depending on the type of data in the column, decide if you want the sort by ascending or descending criteria. For example, A to Z or Z to A. You can sort by up to 3 rows at any time. The standard toolbar has 2 buttons representing ascending and descending sorting. Click any cell in the column you wish to sort by, then click either the ascending or descending button. We'll now demonstrate how you can filter the list so that only the records you want are visible. Excel's autofilter is a powerful list editing tool. Unlike the data form, it displays the records in the worksheet by filtering out all the records that do not match the criteria you specified. Select a cell within the list you are going to use, then click on Data, Filter, Autofilter. The field names on the top of the list change to look like pull-down menus. Click the arrow on the pull-down list that you are going to use as the basis for your selection and select the criteria you want from the list. If you choose Custom Filter, the Custom Filter box appears. Now follow the steps within it. Repeat these steps for other field names if you want to use them as part of your filter criteria. As you make each selection from the autofilter boxes, the list changes to hide those records that do not meet your criteria. If you do not like how the autofilter has edited your list, you can click again on that autofilter box and choose All to restore the list the way it was. To leave the autofilter, click Data, Filter, and Autofilter again. Pivot tables are also a new feature of Excel 5.0. They replace the data analysis crosstab functions found in Excel 4.0. They allow you to analyze data stored in lists or databases and tables. When your database contains a large amount of uncollated records, trying to summarize the data in an easily identifiable form could be tedious and difficult. The pivot tables solve this problem by allowing you to choose which fields in the list will be a part of the summarized data, as well as provide the criteria for summarization. Just as Chart Wizard guided you through the chart creation process, the Pivot Table Wizard will lead you through the steps. Click on Data, then Pivot Table from the main menu bar. The first Pivot Table Wizard dialog box will appear. Just as with the Chart Wizard, you can move back or forward through the steps if you need to make any changes at a later stage. In the first dialog box, you specify where the data is coming from. The default is an Excel list. Click on Next when you are finished. Step 2 asks you for the range of data in the worksheet that you want to use in the pivot table. The default value is the coordinates for the entire list. You can either accept this or filter the list before you run the pivot table to include only those records that you require. Then click on Next. Step 3 is where you have to give serious thought to what you want the pivot table to summarize. Here, you have the 3 sections of the pivot table that need to be assigned field names from your list. The 3 areas are Row, Column, and Data Area. This section might take a bit of experimentation until you get used to how the process works. Try different combinations of the field names you want to use and see how Pivot Table summarizes the data. The data area of the pivot table is where the information is summarized. The other 2 row and column field names provide the criteria for the summarization. We want to find out the total hours worked by each employee on their respective projects. The key field we are interested in is hours worked. Drag it into the data area. Then drag last name into the row area and project into the column area. Then click Next. In the last prompt screen for Pivot Table Wizard, you set where you want the pivot table to be placed on your worksheet. If you choose to put it in your active worksheet, make sure that it will not be placed over any existing data where it could erase anything underneath it. The safest thing to do is to place it on a worksheet by itself. The Other Options area of the last dialog box also asks you how you want the summarized data to be added up. For example, grand totals for the rows, columns, or both. When you have decided all of this, click Finish. The pivot table will then be placed in the worksheet. Also notice that the pivot table toolbar will become visible on the screen. If you want to edit the pivot table and add new fields or other data to the source list, they will not become part of the pivot table unless you run Step 3 of the Pivot Table Wizard again, where you determine what fields go in the rows, columns, and data areas.
Stop.
You could create one very large worksheet to handle all the tables and charts if you wanted to. However, this would begin to become very cumbersome and difficult to update, and you would end up scrolling through a large part of the worksheet to find the information you wanted. The most efficient way to work with a number of data tables is to put them on different sheets within the workbook or even in separate workbooks. Each of them would start in the top left-hand corner of the sheet. Here, we will briefly describe linking a number of workbooks containing related data. Think about how you would find the reference of one cell and put it in another on the same worksheet. Cell A1's value is 1,345, and we wanted to put that value in cell D5. The formula in cell D5 would look like this: equals A1. Another example. If we wanted to add the values of cells A1 through A5 and put the result in cell D6, the formula would be AutoSum A1 through A5. These are simple examples. There is no reason that you could not do the same thing when the data you want is in another workbook. All you need to do is use the exact same formula and tell it which workbook the cell is in. In our example, we arranged 4 workbooks. Country.xls is a workbook that will contain the total sales figures for cars, motorcycles, parts and accessories for the whole country. West.xls, Central.xls, and East.xls are workbooks that contain the raw data about the sales revenue that is to be summarized by the table in Country.xls. Country.xls lists totals for the 3 regions. Here is how we get the values from the 3 workbooks into the Country.xls workbook. Remember, all you need to do is tell the cell where you want the information to be displayed and where the data is coming from. These formulas that reference cells from outside the current workbook are called external reference formulas. Here is the format. Suppose we wanted to find the total sales of cars, motorcycles, and accessories for the West sales area for January. Click on the cell B3 in Country.xls where you want the total to be displayed. Click on the AutoSum button on the toolbar. Click on the West XLS window to activate that frame. Highlight the cells containing the figures for cars, motorcycles, and accessories for January, then click on the check mark or press Return. The total will be displayed in the Country.xls workbook. Experiment by changing one of the values in the West.xls workbook. Notice that the total in the other workbook changes. Look at the formula for the total sales figures in the Country workbook. It is the same sum formula you already know, adapted to contain the reference for other workbooks. Now we will complete the table to include the January total for the other 2 sales areas. Look at the worksheet on the screen. It is an expanded example of the sales area worksheet we were working with in the last section. We have continued the data series for 6 months and adding quarterly subtotals. The sales regions are also arranged in columns instead of rows. Notice that the summary totals for each quarter and the total revenue for each sales area are hard to read amongst all the other data in the table. This is where outlining comes in. Excel has the ability to recognize the layout of data tables if it is laid out in a logical and consistent format, then condenses the data down to show just the subtotals and year-to-date figures. On this table, you can see that we have used the sum command to add each sales area's total revenue for each month and summed up each month's activity to produce quarterly totals. A year-to-date total is also included at the end. We have highlighted these rows and columns to make them easier to see. Excel now uses the sum formulas to determine how the data in the rows and columns is laid out for outlining. Choose any cell in your table of data, then click on the Data menu item. Now click the Group and Outline menu item. Then click Auto Outline. The screen will change to show the outlining tools around the top and left edges. There are level bars showing what the rows and columns will be condensed to. There will be one bar with an associated negative sign button next to it for each row and column containing a sum formula. Experiment by clicking on the negative sign above the first quarter column. Notice that raw data tables that were used to produce the first quarter totals disappear. Now do the same for all the other negative buttons for the rows and columns. Eventually, you are left with just the quarterly totals, the year-to-date figures, and the sales area totals. When you click on the negative button, a plus button will take its place. This allows you to return to the original table layout later. Ignoring the condensing capabilities of Excel, we can still make the data in the table easier to read. Excel has a number of auto formats that can be used to make tables of data more readable. Click on any cell within the table. Click on Format from the main menu bar. Then select Auto Format. The Auto Format selection box appears. We will choose the Colorful 2 Auto Format. It will then be applied to the table. Notice how it recognizes the columns that are summarized and colors them appropriately. Visual Basic for Applications, or VBA, is Microsoft's move to standardize its programming languages. With VBA, it is hoped that you will not have to learn a new macro programming language for every Microsoft program. If you know VBA, you will be able to quickly develop macros for a range of applications. Record a simple macro by clicking Record. A dialog box appears asking you to name the new macro. Do so, then click Options. Excel 5.0 gives you more flexibility to record your macros and when you want them located after you've finished. You can even make your macro an item on the Tools toolbar by clicking that option on the dialog box. This macro will put a border around the cells, bold the text, then auto-sum the column of numbers. You even have the option of recording your macro in the VBA language or the Excel 4.0 macro language. If you record it in VBA, it will be stored in the workbook on a sheet called Module. If you record it as an Excel 4.0 macro, the sheet is called Macro. Experiment by recording two identical macros, one in VBA, the other in Excel 4.0 language. Look at the difference between the way they are written. VBA looks much more complicated, but when you begin to understand the language and its construction, you will find that it offers a great deal more flexibility. We hope that this video has given you a sound introduction to some more of the powerful tools found in Excel 5.0. Take time to explore and experiment further each of the topics discussed here and see how far you can make Excel 5.0 work for you.